Gamers, gals, non-binary pals, it's time for the return of Smarter with Stevie. This is everyone's favorite segment, right? Like, how could you not like this? So Smarter with Stevie has returned in order to tell you about the silliest, just the most fucked up card of all time. We're here to give a MasterClass on simultaneous equation canon. I'm gonna teach you guys how it works. I'm gonna teach you guys everything you need to know about the card. Here's a big old table of contents of every little topic that we're going to break down later today. YouTube, just save yourselves. Go play the Elden Ring DLC. The actual strat is to quit Yu-Gi-Oh forever and to play the Elden Ring DLC. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. But yes, we're going to go through a little bit of a classroom discussion. Fun fact, the first ever job I had was as a math tutor for kids in, like, the elementary school library, where I would tell them to let me know if they needed help with anything, and I would watch anime on my phone. It was awesome. I love that shit. All right, so first of all, what is simultaneous equation canon? SEC canon, also known as the sex canon, reads: banish one fusion monster and two Xyz monsters with the same rank from your extra deck whose combined level and ranks equal the total number of cards in both players' hands and on the field. Then you can apply this effect. Return two of your banished monsters to the extra deck, one Xyz and one fusion, whose combined level and rank equal the level or rank of one face-up monster your opponent controls. Then banish all cards they control. So the first time you read this, you're gonna be like, what the actual fuck does this even mean? But let's try and break it down piece by piece. You're gonna need fusions and Xyz monsters. So you basically have to build your extra deck around this for the most part. Additionally, you actually have to make sure when you're banishing and returning cards that you get your math right. If you can't resolve the second part of this, you just don't get the effect. You might as well just like extra foolish barrel and just output 3. And of course, massive shoutouts to Lewis T on Curry Bros for discovering this tech in, you guessed it, Labyrinth. But the idea is you banish Xyz's and fusion monsters equal to the amount of cards on the field and in both players' hands. And if your opponent controls a monster with a level, return a fusion and Xyz whose total combined level/rank equals that monster's level and wipe their board. So the main extra deck that seems to be the most effective in the current metagame, or at least, you know, something that actually functions, is Xyz monsters level 3 through 6 and fusion monsters level 1 through 5. You can get a little bit more broad. You could technically play 14 if you want to play something like the Chimera Fusion, the one that if you dogmatic a punishment gets to like revive a fiend, which is pretty relevant. But then you're kind of cutting into Chaos Angel or Typhon space, and I'm just not a huge fan of it. So for the most part, the only relevant deck that could play Sex Cannon is going to be Labyrinth. So again, Xyz ranks 3 to 6, this should be a 6, and fusions level 1 to 5. So what does this all mean mathematically? We said a lot of words, but not a lot of actual explanation. Let's describe SEC canon first. You are going to be solving a simultaneous equation. So the first part of this card, where you're banishing equal to the amount of cards or whatever, it's much easier to think of it as a literal equation. So the two Xyz monsters, it's going to be 2x plus y equals a, and then the second part of the effect, where you're returning to, can be x plus y equals b. Now, what do these variables mean specifically? A is going to be the cards on the board plus cards in both players' hands. B is going to be the level of a monster your opponent controls. By the way, this does not target. So if your opponent has, let's say, a level 6 and a level 8, you get to actually choose on resolution in large quotations. You don't actually target. You get the idea. There's also X being the Xyz rank and Y equaling the fusion level. Is there going to be a quiz at the end? Yes, actually. Is that an organic chemistry tutor thumbnail? This motherfucker has gotten me through so many classes, it's not even funny. Now we're going to talk about the constraints. For our extra deck purposes, X is at minimum or equal to 3, at maximum B6, and Y is greater than or equal to 1, and Y is less than or equal to 5. So our X and Y can only ever fall under these constraints. We can't have an X equals 2 because we don't play rank 2s. We can't have X equal 12 because we don't play 2 Typhons. Good if you want to. It's not gonna be good, but you know, banish a level 13. Why not? Now, using these constraints, we can determine what our A and B are going to look like. So when we plug X and Y into these equations, based on our constraints, our minimums for A are going to be 7 and 17, and our minimums for B are going to be 4 and 11. Because if X's minimum is 3 and it's Y plus 1, the minimum, you know, it's going to be X plus Y equals B, so it could be at minimum 4, 6 plus 5, it could be 11. You guys kind of get the idea. Now, what does this mean? This means that realistically, and by realistically, I mean literally, we can can only resolve Sex Cannon if cards in play and in hand are from 7 to 17, and monsters our opponent controls are leveled 4 through 11. Can't banish level 3s, can't banish level 2s, can't banish level 12s. With the current extra deck setup, which is what we're going to be talking about for purposes of this lecture, the standard extra deck lineup, we can only banish stuff from 4 through 11. For all intents and purposes, I think this is pretty good. You can maybe add a level 6 if you want to start getting to like the 12 range, but I just don't think it's really necessary, nor do I think we really have the space for it unless you want to start cutting Typhon. Now, if you just wanted the fucking answers to this, here's how to do every single combination of simultaneous equation banishes. I typed it all out, I did my math mentally. This is how you do literally all of them. If you want to banish a level 4, you have to banish 2 rank 3s and a level 1, and there have to be 7 total cards in hand. If you want to banish a level 5, you gotta get the idea. Just take your fucking screenshot now, hit the subscribe button, donate to my Patreon. Goodbye forever. But for those of you who want a little bit more in-depth discussion, what does this actually look like graphologically? Look, chat, a graph. When we plot these points onto a graph, like 3-1, 3-2, 4-1, whatever, we kind of get little points. If we want to banish a level 4, it's going to look like this. If we want to banish level 5s, it's going to look like this. Banish level 6s, looks like this. 7, 8, 9. However, this has a little interesting pattern where we actually, delve into this. This is the physical representation of the amount of combinations we have access to. We'll see, and this tells us that level 7 and 8 have the most combinations. There are a good amount of combinations for level 6 and 9 monsters. So this tells us that monsters level 6 through 9 are fair pickings for SEC canon. So what does that tell us about the format? You'll see a bit later. And monsters that are level 4, level 5, level 10, level 11, level 12, level 3, level 2, blah, 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 blah. Those aren't really going to be something we can consider. And that tells us that SEC canon actually has the most usage of applications versus decks of level 7 and level 8 monsters. Again, there are applications versus 6 and 9, so think of like Virtual World, Fiendsmith, that sort of stuff. There are real applications that we can consider when it comes to those cards, but if you're against a deck with like only level 4s, only level 5s, 9s, 10s, 11s, you're not gonna have a great time, unfortunately. Note that these levels are not mutually exclusive. So let's say you're against a deck with 4s and 8s, that's pretty good. That means you can hit them on both the 4 axis and the 8 axis. If you're against 6 and 10s, you can hit them on the 6 and 10 axis, 7 and 10 axis, 7 and 10, you get the idea. This also gives us another visual representation of what our A and B's kind of have to be in regards to how we're actually going to be resolving this on the lower and upper end of the curve. And that's because if we want to hit low level monsters, there need to be an extremely low amount of cards in hand and on play, and vice versa for high level monsters. For 6 through 9, there could be basically almost any amount of cards in play, and we're usually going to be able to find a line. But for stuff like level 10s or level 11s or 4 or 5s, we have to have a specifically high or low amount respectively in order for it to go off. And unfortunately, in certain matchups, this card is gonna be completely dead. Like against Sprite, this thing's fucking useless. What the fuck does Sprite even summon level 4s? So let's do an example problem, chat. Let's assume simultaneous equation cannon is activated on this board state and our opponent has no response and lets it go through. Is this equation solvable? And if so, what is the solution? So let's count the cards in play. 1 in hand, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 total cards in play, so our A is going to be 13, and our B is going to be 8, because we ignore the Celine, we ignore the fucking monster in the back row, doesn't fucking matter. B is only ever going to be 8 because it counts levels. Doesn't count ranks, doesn't count link monster ratings, it's only levels. Our equation, when we plug that in, is going to be 2x plus y equals 13, and x plus y equals 8. So now we're going to solve this equation. We're going to subtract x plus y from 2x plus y equals 13. That's going to give us x plus 5, because the y's get canceled out, and 2x minus x is just going to give us 1x. 13 minus 8 is going to give us x equals 5. When we plug that into our original equation of x plus y equals 8, 5 plus y equals 8, subtract one side from the other, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, we're going to get y equals 3. So because x falls into this constraint and y falls under this constraint, this equation is in fact solvable. So because x equals 5 and y equals 3, and x is Xyz monsters and y is fusion monster levels, that means we have to manage 2 rank 5s and 1 level 3 in order to nuke our opponent's board. And congratulations, you just beat Snake Eye. And congratulations on your top 4 national finish, chat. And again, you can apply this formula to basically any single board state. The number one way I could describe to how to practice getting good at doing simultaneous equation stuff is to watch DB Grinder replays and look at like common board states like on Snake Eye or Voiceless or Tenpai or whatever, and then try and mentally graph out, like, is this board state sex canonable? And if so, let's try and do the math. Sometimes board states won't be, sometimes board states will be, but it's important to recognize these patterns if you are going to be playing this specific version of Lab. I think that Sex Canon Lab is probably the best variant, just because Sex Canon solves a very specific issue with Labyrinth, and that is kind of a shitty Snake Eye matchup, as well as not having a truly impactful board wipe. But overall, this was kind of just a fun experiment in math and data and graphing and all that silly jazz. I can already see the title being called Sect. Pronounce it as Sex Ed. Ooh, that's a good one. But anyways, thank you for watching. Please subscribe so I can afford to feed my 12 kids. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's gonna be it. See you guys in the next math class.